Are you working on anything else? Or what are you doing to fill your time and pay the bills since you're on hiatus from being a
Right,
showrunner?
for that series. So I don't know if you've heard of Angel Studios. Probably everybody has by now, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a process where you can submit a video called a torch
Mm-hmm.
to try and pass through Guild because the whole thing is crowdfunded or
Mm-hmm.
crowd. But the way it works is you submit a video and their members called the Guild vote on the video. And if they vote, there's two questions they ask. One is, does this project amplify light? Because that's their main mission at Angel.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it is run by Christians, or they don't, it's not a purely Christian mission
Mm-hmm.
on that platform. So, does it amplify light? Yes or no? If it's no, pretty much
You're
you're
out.
dead.
Yeah.
And then the next main question is, how disappointed would you be if Angel did not fund this project? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed. And you need to pass 40% saying very disappointed.
Hmm.
That's the bar. If you get past 40%, you're pretty much in to the next stage where they now will try to help you get it financed and distributed and marketed.
That's
And
interesting.
less than 6% of projects get past the guild. But the ones that do get past, they have massive support behind it, as you can see with Sound of Freedom.
Yeah.
But even they had a His Only Son, which came out in Easter.
Mm-hmm.
That was I think about a sub $500,000 film, and it made about $15 million in 2 weekends or 2 weeks.
I mean, even once you account for the probably at least a 65% take by the theaters there, that's huge on an ROI.
Yes, and the reason they can do that is, and the reason they have that crowd vet the project before it gets financed is
Mm-hmm.
these guys become active promoters and champions of the project. They help to push it to their church groups, push it to their friends, and effectively help the project become profitable.
That's fantastic. I mean, it is a finding those early adopters and those just the loudest people in your audience who will just shout about you is always the hardest part. So, you have something going through the guild right now, or
So I'm in the process of putting a video together to submit to the guild.
okay? Well, I record fairly far ahead of when I release, so I always have a pipeline going. Um, so it might be ready by the time it's there. If it is, I'll drop a clip and a card or a link and a card here. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Basically, what I like about their process is
Mm-hmm.
anybody can submit. It's not a
Yeah.
closed door, and it's very transparent. Um, they give feedback on what your votes actually were, so you'll know how far off you are. And if it's close, you can actually do a re-edit and resubmit.
Okay.
So,
That's really
and some
interesting.
projects failed first time but got past the second time.
I mean, they clearly did well with the Sound of Freedom in terms of just straight business. I'm not, for clarity, I'm not talking about politics here or anything. It's not a political show.
Right.
But the box office numbers of Sound of Freedom are really,
Staggering.
yeah.
Staggering.
Um, and I mean, I've heard some things that some of those are inflated, which
Well,
I believe.
they
Yeah.
have a pay it forward model,
Yeah.
which they created when they did the TV series The Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole storyline about how they were in a lawsuit with Disney and they needed to make a certain amount of money by a certain time, or else the company was going to go bankrupt. And they were SVOD, but they changed that to a pay it forward model,
Mm-hmm.
donate to let other people see it for free. And they made 4 times the amount of money. They made just enough to stave off bankruptcy. Um, Disney had a new legal counsel team, and then their $62 million judgment against them got reduced to $10 million, which they had to pay off over 10 years or something. Which, that's easy for them at this point.
Yeah.
But basically, that was created out of necessity, but they've used that because obviously they're trying to promote from a biblical standpoint, promote Christianity. But in the case of Sound of
Mm-hmm.
Freedom, it's more about the cause because I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it doesn't really talk about Christianity at all in the film.
I did not get that sense. But that actually explains something. I saw some uncorroborated reports on social media that basically they actually went to see Sound of Freedom, and even though these box offices numbers were gigantic, a lot of the theaters were just barely packed at all, like hardly anybody in there. And if there is a
Um,
pay it forward, that would make sense.
yes, but I think officially somebody asked how many of those tickets were paid forward,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget who it was that said probably less than 7 or 8%
Oh
of
wow, that's way
their.
less than I expected.
When I went to see the movie,
Yeah.
um, yeah, the theater was 80% full.
Okay.
And this was not the first few weeks. This was probably like week 3.
Sometimes they do, I mean, rarely, but sometimes there is a later peak in viewership on it. That's kind of what the limited release model was trying to capitalize on back in the day under,
And I saw it,
yeah,
in a little town in upstate New York, not in a major metropolitan. So,
makes
um,
sense.
so
What
from
town?
Middletown.
Middletown. Okay. My mother and grandparents lived in a town outside of Rochester called Hilton.
Oh, okay.
I've heard of Middletown. I haven't been there, but yeah. Um, yeah. The No, that's really interesting. And again, I only have uncorroborated reports on that. And when I said they probably inflated their numbers, that wasn't a slight against
Oh,
the Sound
sure.
of Freedom. It was just almost a universal concept, basically. So it's
I
a
think it's a genius marketing campaign, honestly. You can say, hey, you can
mhm.
watch this movie for free, but it makes you actually investigate, well, what's this movie?
Yeah, that's a I think the pay it forward model, especially on a faith-based platform, um is genius marketing,
Genius.
basically. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is such a great call on that. And the it's not necessarily my demographic personally, but it is I can appreciate good marketing wherever it comes from. But the yeah, so that's really interesting. Have you do you do a lot in the faith-based space or do
No,
you
um, I'm not a Christian myself,
mhm,
but I do recognize is some crossover in terms of wanting to
mhm,
bring positive things into the world and
mhm.
talk about real issues that a lot of people are dealing with in a way that's more constructive or leads to discussion that might actually lead to change as opposed to just wallowing in, hey, the world sucks, life sucks, just
Mhm.
burn it all down, or let's focus on serial killers or people that are gangsters and criminals, which
I could agree with you there. I mean, I've distributed a lot of horror movies and things like that, but at some point it is a I have a business to run and mouths to feed. So the and that's what I know will sell. The other thing that sells really well is faith-based films that is It's almost universal. I specifically don't do a ton in that market. I mean, I've been on the Ministry of Motion Pictures podcast twice. And I have a great respect for the models that faith-based filmmakers use to get their work out there. It's just feels disingenuous if I'm the one running it directly as opposed to working with somebody who is a person of faith, because I'm not. I told my father-in-law, asked if I was going to marry his daughter in a church, and I said, "No, we don't want a sunburnt groom. Just that's not gonna help." But